David Litt, who was not only a speechwriter and joke writer for a president who had a sense of humor, unlike the current one, but who has just written a book. It's right behind him because as a good author, he has it. It is a wonderful book. I don't like surfing. I've never surfed. I probably will not surf, but I love this book. It is called It's Only Drowning, a true story of learning to surf and the search for a common ground. Welcome, David Litt.
Well, Jen and April, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, so God, what a day. We need some uplift. Should we all go surfing? I mean, by the way, this is the week also in which we lost Brian Wilson. So
Yeah,
talking about like our surfing memories. So I gotta ask you, why did you write this book about surfing? It's like so beyond anything we would have expected of David Litt. Maybe because surfing was something so beyond what David Litt thought he was.
yeah, this was not at all a book I ever imagined I would write. And actually, I have it behind me, but I'm going to grab it.
Absolutely.
It's, uh,
And it's wonderful. It's
yeah,
wonderful,
the
folks.
cover is all shiny and yellow and very beachy, so I'm very proud of it, even though I did not design it. Um,
Exactly.
and I never imagined I would start surfing. And this book is really about me surfing with my crazy brother-in-law. And he once threw out his back training to become a mixed martial arts fighter, and I once threw out my back lifting a bag of cat litter. So like he's a surfer, I am not a surfer. And then I started to pick it up is sort of post-pandemic. I was really just trying to get out of that post-pandemic rut we were all in, and I got hooked. And I decided I wanted to try to get from having never picked up a board to surfing Hawaii's North Shore, which is one of the most dangerous places in surfing. And I needed someone who could help me do it. So suddenly my crazy brother-in-law and I are spending all of this time together. And so it's a story about surfing. It's also a story about friendship and an unlikely friendship in this day and age. And it was the kind of I did not mean for this to become a book at all. And then two-thirds of the way in, I was like, I'm embarrassing myself so much that there's a book here. Anytime I'm doing something where I'm like, when I'm the butt of the joke, I'm like, this feels like a book. And so now it is.
All right. So I have to ask you before we talk about your brother-in-law and what he would think of today, what he is thinking about today. Maybe you've talked to him, although talking politics has been kind of a tenuous activity. You talk about something very serious, which is you really went through a period of depression, and surfing was one of the things that helped you come out of it. Talk to us a little bit about what that was and how kind of, to use the metaphor, you got your feet under you by doing this activity that was so dangerous and so different than anything you had ever done.
Well, I think it's more important now than ever because when I started surfing, it was post-pandemic, like I said, we were in the middle of all of these crises. I feel like we look back now and we're like, oh, those were simpler times in some ways. But at the time we didn't know what was coming. And I felt like it was just there was so much crisis, so much terrible news in the world that I really became overwhelmed by it, right? I've always been the kind of person who thinks, okay, I might not be able to fix everything, but I can make the world just a little bit better. And this was the first time in my life in 2021, 2022, where I lost faith that that was possible. And it was not just sort of how I felt about the world, but it changed how I felt about myself. And I didn't mean for surfing to be my way back into the world, but so much of this activity, and this is one of the reasons why for me the book is for surfers, but it's also for people who never ever want to surf. For me, it was about building courage. And I'm thinking about that today. I mean, I was out here in Asbury Park at one of the protests, but millions of people around the country are stepping up and finding this kind of courage at a moment when, frankly, Donald Trump and Stephen Miller are counting on us to be afraid. And I don't think that it's that we all need to grab a surfboard, but I definitely think all of us need to find more courage than we ever thought we would need just to be citizens, just to be Americans, just to step out and do our basic responsibilities and make this country better. And so for me, I often find myself when I feel scared, either reading the news or, thinking, okay, what am I going to do today? So much of it comes back to what did I learn as a surfer, right? How would a surfer deal with this? And it
Wow.
really helped me.
So
Wow.
it's a fight or flight kind of thing, I guess. Look, you come at me, my fear makes me fight, right? I would love to go surfing, but I find that a lot of people have shifted. They've tuned out this time, but they know it's wrong. They don't watch TV as much as they used to. They're streaming now just to get the bites because it's too cerebral. It's very heavy. It's very depressing. Are you finding that? Because the first term, so many people are talking about, oh God, my pressure is up, my this, my that. Are you finding we've had the first term, we know what happened then, but are you finding an easier outlet to cope now that you're doing all the other things? Is it easier now because you know how to cope?
It is, and I think the thing that we're all reckoning with, even now, it's been what almost 150 days,
Six
and
months, just say 6 months.
yeah, right. 150 years, a million years. It's been forever. And the first time around, we all said, okay, this is a mistake, right?
Much,
Hillary
yeah.
won the popular vote. We're still the majority of this country, the anti-MAGA coalition, and this is going to be 4 years and then it's done. And now I think we're like, oh, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And that's a very dispiriting thing if you don't handle it right internally. And so I think for me, having that balance is really helpful, right? Like today, I was really proud to be in Asbury Park. A part of it was, by the way, great turnout. This is not a huge town, 17,000 people, and there were hundreds of people. It was one of the best organized protests I've ever
Wow.
been to, and they did such a good job. So it was really inspiring. And then tomorrow, assuming the weather and the waves hold, I'm going surfing, and that combination is actually really important. I think it's how you build the long-term commitment. And the other thing I will say, April, to your question, I think that one of the things I learned when I was surfing with Matt, my brother-in-law, he's like Joe Rogan's biggest fan, right? So in a lot of ways, I found myself in the center of these divides that are tearing our country apart. But the biggest difference between us is I think about politics all the time, and he really doesn't. And it's not, I don't mean that as a pejorative thing. I mean that as it's just the way a lot of people are oriented. And so one of our jobs, I think, as people who care about the country and care about the future of the country is connecting with people who are less engaged. I mean, that was a huge part of why Trump ended up back in the White House. And I think it's a huge part of what we all need to do. So it's both, right? We have to be out there protesting and we have to figure out how to meet the people who would never, ever, ever go to a protest, but they still care about the country. They still care about where we're moving together. We have to do both of those things.
But David, it's so hard. It is so hard for a lot of people who are dug in, believe what they believe, who are tree huggers, protesters, versus the people who are out here. Donald Trump is the greatest thing. And that's all I mean, there's such a juxtaposition, they're polar opposites. So do you find a commonality like you do with your brother-in-law?
Do it with Matt, right? I
Yeah.
mean, you admit that, he's wrong a lot of the time and he's crazy some of the time, but somehow you are at least able to talk about it. And again, we're looking at in the background, Flagstaff Live, America still out there with a heartbeat.
They are
So,
out there.
Yeah.
David, how did you manage to kind of find at least some common ground or common surf with your brother-in-law?
So surfing and this journey that we went on together, it actually totally changed how I think about common ground. I
Yeah.
used to think that common ground meant, you know, I think this about an important political issue. I think that Donald Trump is, and by the way, I don't just think this. I think the evidence shows it, right? These are matters of right and wrong. Trump is a threat
Yes.
to the rule of law, and somebody finds common ground because we end up agreeing. And I actually think in a lot of cases that's not true, right? And what I did find is that neutral ground is more important than I thought. And so when
Wow.
I say neutral ground, what I mean is, if you're watching this right now and there's someone in your life where you just can't talk about the politics or anything related to politics anymore, I think it's okay to talk about something else, right? Have a foundation, a friendship, a relationship that has nothing to do with politics. And what I found with Matt is we actually talk all the time about serious stuff now. We didn't when we first started hanging out together. But now, Jen, you asked, have I asked him what he thinks about today? I haven't yet, but I'm totally curious. I'm going to. And it's not just about trying to, we're not debating. I'm not trying to persuade him, but it's genuine curiosity. And I think he's more curious about the way I see the world. And that curiosity is really helpful and it gives me some hope, right? We're not going to persuade everybody who voted for Trump that they made a mistake. We're not going to convince everybody, but I do think you can respect all people without having to respect all of their opinions. And that's a
Wow.
really important thing that I hope people take away from the book and that I hope, obviously this is a beach read, but I hope it's the kind of beach read that also makes you feel a little bit braver, a little bit more insightful about the world.
Wow. So as we wrap up the day, give us your overall kind of sense. You've been very low, like many of us. You served in a White House, which must have been one high after another. Where are you kind of as you look out at this big, complicated, screwed up, wonderful, diverse, violent, loving, all the contradictions in the world, that kind of country? What's your overall sense of where we are and where we're going?
Yeah, I would say very cautiously optimistic in that, but I actually think, to me, I think today was a big moment. So I think that
Yeah.
April 5th, which was, the first big protests, the hands-off protests, to me that was the American people versus co-president Elon Musk. And
Yeah.
I think the No Kings protest today, coinciding with Trump's, big birthday party parade, is the American people standing up to Stephen Miller, who's the new co-president. And there's a lot wrong with America right now. I mean, I'm not trying, we could, if we had another 6 or 7 hours, we could go through everything, and I'm sure we all know. But I do think if you're Stephen Miller, co-president Stephen Miller, and you thought at the beginning of last week, I'm going to send in the National Guard, I'm going to send in the Marines to Los Angeles, I'm going to demonize immigrants, and everybody is going to rally around that. And then we're going to have this military parade that's kind of the cherry on top. I think the opposite has happened. I think you're
Yes.
seeing Americans, including, by the way, Americans who are not super political, saying this is wrong. Something I noticed, by the way, Joe Rogan, by like today or yesterday, was talking about immigration and saying, what ICE is doing to people with no criminal background, this doesn't make sense. It's not right. And I think that is, this could be, fingers crossed, the beginning of the end of Stephen Miller's co-presidency, just like April 5th was the beginning of the end of Elon Musk's co-presidency. And that would be a huge, huge moment in American history and also in the, sort of tiny slice of history that we're living through.
David, from your lips to God's ears. And remember, folks, it's not only a great beach read, it's just a great read altogether. So for those contrarians, I'm going to have David on and talk about it. We are also going to be, for those of you who live in Washington, D.C., at Politics and Prose together
Right.
on June 28th. Am I getting it right, David?
You were
And
getting
we're
it
going to
right.
get to we're going to get to talk about it. And, it's really a very long commute, David. I have to get out of my house, walk down the street, make a turn, and go into Politics and Prose. So I may just come in my bedroom slippers. I'll tell you.
No, I think no shoes, slippers, you name it. I
All right.
appreciate you being.
Dude, if you're on the beach, no one wears shoes, so you're in good company.
That's a good point. I'm wearing board shorts. That's decided.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, David. We'll enjoy talking to you next time.
Thank you both.
Take care.